Well, this is a story, like you said, an action adventure story about a 600 migrants and asylum seekers kind of trying to find a safe homeland and the challenges that they experience along the way. And there are quite a few that they have to experience. Um, it's a it's based kind of on the reality of today's issues around migration, and it's a story that we don't often hear about.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I am Morgan Gist McDonald, founder CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today a very special guest who's launching his brand new novel called Finding Eden. I have author Brad Dude with us. Thanks for being here, Brad.
Morgan, thank you. It's a pleasure.
So who are some of the characters we get to meet? We've got Captain Anna Kruger. What's her story, and where do we meet her in the book?
Anna Kruger is a young German sea captain, and my research showed that most women who are captains in the Mediterranean are German women. So that got me kind of exploring that a little bit more detail. But she's been around the block a bit and grew up with her grandfather, who we find out in the story has a past of, as a young man, being involved with the Nazis, and his guilt of trying to shed that guilt as he's grown older and is sick and is about to die. Didn't want his granddaughter to have that kind of guilt for not helping, as he didn't get to help when he had the opportunity. So Captain Kruger has a kind of a change in life. She'd been a cargo ship captain in a variety of ways in places, and thought it was a little bit more worthwhile of a life to be involved with rescuing migrants. So she signs on with C-Suite, which is an organization that rescues migrants throughout the Mediterranean.
Wow. So what time period are we set in this novel?
This is present day. So the pirates we're talking about are not the Errol Flynn, old Captain Blood type pirates, but these are modern day pirates who, based out of the Canary Islands, who have basically preyed on tourists and ships, and finally got to this island by virtue of taking over a ship that and is trying to escape from the Spanish authorities, crash in the fog on the reef. And so they are stranded as well on this uncharted island.
So this is, I mean, that's what's fun. It's pirates in modern day, which I think a lot of times, especially in the U.S., we're a little bit myopic and we forget about sort of what might be happening internationally. But pirates are real, and they really do prey on, as you said, tourists, and they're sort of running away from modern day governments. And so in this book, they land on an island, right? And so they have to find a way to sort of live on this uninhabited island. Is that kind of where
that's where it started. And we have a freebie in the book, which is I narrated a kind of a preamble to the story. So it kind of sets the tone for how they got to that island. But basically they have taken over a ship full of migrants themselves. So when they all crash on this reef, there they are, a small band of pirates with hundreds of migrants, and they're not quite sure what to do with them. They've been on the island for a year when our German captain and her 600 people arrive at that island. But they arrived not because of crashing on the reef. They arrived because the European capitals have banned the acceptance of asylum seekers, which is, even today, if you want to be an asylum or a migrant, you often end up in a detention camp. And these folks choose not to do that, as all these countries close their borders to them. So they had heard about this island and just took off and took a chance. Unfortunately, they find that there are pirates running the show.
Well, folks, if you're watching or listening and you're like, this sounds like a pretty intriguing novel, good news is you can actually grab a free copy right now. So in celebration of the launch, we are offering the ebook for free, and that audio clip you can get as well, the prologue to this whole pirate, modern day pirate adventure. Go to paperravenbooks.com/finding Eden. And that'll be linked up in the notes next to this video too. That's paperravenbooks.com/finding Eden. That'll take you right over to Amazon. You can grab a free copy of the ebook. Even if you aren't going to read it until, this weekend or next week, go ahead and grab it today while you're here and thinking about it. Get it loaded up and ready for your next, novel adventure. And Brad, I'm curious. It sounds like you've done a lot of research for this book. Where did the idea come from to write a book about sort of modern pirates and asylum seekers?
My wife is the migration specialist at Loyola University here in New Orleans. And so we always have issues and stories coming as she meets migrants. Most of her migrants are coming up from Latin America that she deals with. So the whole idea about migrants, and I had visited or really didn't visit, but went by when I was working in Jordan one time, a big migrant camp there. So I knew they existed and started to do more research on it. And one of the interesting things I found about it was the trip through the Sahara Desert, and which is another freebie that we have in our book, is the crossing through the Sahara by a couple of young teenagers, brother and sister, who are kind of themed stars of our book as well. And I use the actual places and the route that they took, and people take today to get through the desert. And it's amazing stories that I uncovered about the trials and tribulations of that, and how many people die along the way and are robbed, and the baksheesh, or the money they have to pay off folks to get to freedom, really. So this was a trip from Agadez in Niger all the way up to Tripoli, is where our young teenagers go before they jump on a rubber raft to try to get out and meet the ship that they hope will take them to Europe, but it doesn't turn out that way.
How do you even approach researching a topic like this? Because there's some true stories kind of woven in here, or were served as inspiration for these characters. How do you even approach doing that kind of research?
For me, it was I kind of put myself in the mind of these teenagers, of what they would have to go through, and who they would have to meet, and where they'd have to stay. And, they are trundled with 23 other people in the back of a pickup truck, is how they do it, all jammed together, and in caravans that are fewer and fewer, because of the law is cracking down even there on that. So that research, and then into the ships, what kind of ships, and how are people rescued, and the rafts that they use, and the number of deaths. For an example, for a while there was a 6 or 7 year period where 8 people would drown a day, they estimate, trying to cross the Mediterranean to get to Europe. So it's shocking, really. And so if that, I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want them to end up in a camp. So what else could we do? Plus my background in the South Pacific and being on islands, and I used to ride those kinds of old dirty ships myself as a volunteer, that kind of put all those together.
Yeah. Are there any, should we look for any Easter egg moments where it's directly inspired from your South Pacific days that made its way into the novel?
I just told a friend of mine that story, and I'll tell your listeners as well, that the 3 ships, the names of the 3 ships, the Militobi, which is Captain Kruger's ship, the App Islander is another pirate ship, and the Roddock, the first ship, those are the names of 3 of the ships that I rode out in the Marshall Islands as a volunteer, and spent too many nights on my back on a mat with pigs and diesel drums, and feeling seasick out in the middle of nowhere. So there's an Easter egg for you.
So when you describe those in the novel, it was visceral for you.
It
Right.
was. It really was.
And you had also, there's a screenplay version of this book too. Is that right? Can you give us a little bit of the background on the screenplay and what that was all
Yeah,
about?
I actually wrote the screenplay first, and I'm a member of the International Screenwriters Association. We have before COVID, we would have monthly meetings, and we would kind of give each other feedback on scripts or ideas for scripts. And so that was done, and not having really any Hollywood connections, the feedback was, hey, if you've got time, why don't you flesh out the characters, write a novel about it, because it's exciting. And so the nice thing about COVID, if I can say there was anything nice about COVID, is it reduced the number of my leadership training courses that I would run, and I had more time to work on the novel. So that worked out that way.
Yes, yes. We're seeing a whole kind of new generation of authors coming out of post-COVID. We finally had time to write, and now the
Exactly.
novels are really coming out. So it's been an exciting time in kind of the book world and for
Yeah.
readers. So
Yeah.
you mentioned, Brad, that and I think I said it at the top there, that this is not your first book, right? You've written books, and you've typically written nonfiction books. Is that right?
Yeah, I got 5 nonfiction books on leadership and temperament, and one actually was fiction. My 6th book was fiction. It was kind of a Christmas story, but it's about the same topic of personal temperament, and how the temperament that we are born with influences how we view the world and how we react to other people. And so that was helpful for me in developing the characters, because there are basically 4 temperaments. The model that I co-developed was called the basic elements of temperament, and we call it earth, air, fire, and water. We all have all 4 of those in us, earth being the more traditional type of way of looking at the world. Airs being the more intellectual, curious, visionary types. Fires being the action adventure types, and water being the more homey, the more nurturing side of us. We have all of those in us. One is more than the other. We call that our dominant temperament. So each of our characters in the book they work off their dominant temperaments. And of course, in leadership, our 4th temperament, whichever one that is for you, and it could be any of the 4, typically that gets us in trouble because we have a negative reaction to when we see those kinds of behaviors going on. So that all adds to the milieu of character development in terms of writing.
Fascinating. So, and where could people go if they want to just kind of check out your, your library or your catalog of writing?
Just braddude.com, and it's got all of them. It links right to Amazon and ultimately to Finding Eden as well.
So cool. Yeah. So Finding Eden is ready for release, and to celebrate, you guys, you can grab a free copy of Finding Eden. Go to paperhavenbooks.com/Finding Eden. You can download that ebook right away, right now, while you're here and thinking about it. Load it up for when you are ready for your next action adventure seafaring book. And Brad, I guess I'm curious about you've written multiple books now, right? So we're on to 7 now, plus a screenplay, plus you've kind of been a leadership coach and mentor and trainer for many, many years. And now looking back over your career, basically, I'm curious whether there's any lessons that you've kind of picked up along the way, anything that you maybe wish you could tell a younger version of yourself kind of back in the day.
A quick answer is I wish I would have taken better notes at all the cool places that I used to work at. I was really lucky to work in over 35 countries around the world, usually in the developing world. And it would have been nice to be able to jot down some cool stories and characters that people I met and things like that, I think. But you kind of, that age, you kind of whip through it, and you're kind of country notching, we used to call it. Just, it was cool to be in more countries than your peers, or your friends, and we'd be constantly challenging each other to work in different places. But I also think that a lesson learned for writing is to be able to kind of sit back and reflect and kind of talk to yourself a little bit about what you've taken away from the various experiences that you've had. And I think that plays out a little bit in Finding Eden for me as well.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I almost hear you talking to me like I feel like I'm in that phase of my life where I'm just going through like sort of phases of life as quickly as possible. It's like, actually there's going to be a time where I look back and really, maybe wish I had more notes.
Yeah. Well, in my leadership classes, we also often have people do journals. And today's generation, my experience, don't want to do it too much. And it's that if I'm sitting down writing about myself, I might be missing out on something, And so I want to. I always had a difficult time trying to convince them that do a journaling about leadership and about your reaction to different things on the job can benefit you as you get promoted and continue along your career line. But I understand, the reasons. But my job as an old timer is to kind of kick them a little bit and remind them that that might be a good thing to do.
Consider me reminded.
Yeah.
Well, we are super excited that Finding Eden is out in the world and ready for people. So last reminder, guys, if you're here, you're watching, you're curious, modern day pirates, asylum seekers, Mediterranean, you get Brad's audio prologue of the book. And Brad, you have a lovely narrator voice. So we get kind of the scene set for us in Brad's voice. And then you read the book. Audio versions will be out of in due time, and go ahead and dive in right now. So go to paperravenbooks.com/Finding Eden, grab that free ebook and load it up. Brad, thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time in COVID to write this novel and to be courageous to release it to the world. It's going to spark some really good conversations and I think open up a whole new discussion that many of us hadn't even thought about with, overseas and asylums and modern pirates, and play with the governments and just an adventure, a good kind of rollicking adventure too.
Well, Morgan, thank you so much. I really enjoyed working with Paper Raven on this project, and your team is really a good one. I've enjoyed working with them.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor working with you, and we're excited to get this book out in the world with you. All right, folks, go grab that copy, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.